Now, we have a number of people here who are deeply engaged in this community in a variety of different ways, tackling heart disease, detecting heart disease, preventing heart disease. And so we have a number of people coming up now, 5 of them, in fact, one after the other. We're going to start with Dr. Mike Schubert. Now, Dr. Mike was born and raised in Winnipeg after completing a BSc in biotech at the University of Manitoba. He went on to get a PhD in cardiovascular pathophysiology under Dr. Grant Pierce, a notable international researcher who works in the research center at St. Boniface Hospital, the Albrechtsen Center. And Dr. Mike completed his training as a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center in Dallas under Dr. Eric Olson, and he's been on the faculty of the University of Manitoba since 2003. His area of specialization, or one of them, his lab is particularly interested in how the proper and improper functioning of genes contributes to the development of heart disease. Encoded in genes is the information on when to make proteins, in which tissues they should be made, and in this way, heart proteins are only made in the heart, only when needed. His lab studies how the control mechanisms that turn genes on and off can contribute to heart diseases by being actively activated inappropriately. So I'm at the end of what I know about this, but luckily Dr. Schubert is here to explain.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm a basic scientist, which means I study cells rather than human beings, although what we learn in these cells will give us insight into what's happening in human beings. And so I'm going to talk to you tonight about just a brief overview of some of the stuff that we can learn about by looking at cells. Now, men and women, clearly very different, aren't they? Although if we're honest with ourselves, there's more similarities there than we'd probably like to admit. They're both kind of angry, both pointing angrily at voters, it looks like. And the reality is, sometimes we are very much alike. Sometimes we have problems seeing that there are really subtle differences. If we look at the hearts of these individuals, and I know what you're thinking, they do have hearts, you'd be hard pressed to tell which one was a male heart, which one was a female heart. It's even worse if you look at the cells. These are the cardiomyocytes, the contracting cells that allow the heart to do its job. And you'd be hard pressed to tell which one came from a male heart, which one came from a female heart. So superficially, these seem to be very, very similar. But in fact, they behave very, very differently. And that may underpin why we hear about what we heard about earlier this evening, why men and women get sick differently, why their symptoms are different, and why their treatments may well be different as well. So this is a bit of a mishmash. This is basically a number of steroid hormones that are found in our bodies. And these ones circled on the left is testosterone, on the right is estrogen. And they actually look remarkably similar, although they have extremely different effects in our bodies. In fact, men and women both have estrogen and testosterone in their bodies. The relative amounts are quite different. And in fact, testosterone can change into estrogen when the right enzyme is present. So is the difference between us simply that we have identical cells that are simply bathed in estrogen or bathed in testosterone? Is that all there is to it? Or is there something more different than that? Well, there is something fundamentally different, and Dr. Mers briefly touched on this. Women go through this stage in life, often many times, and as a result, their heart changes dramatically. Their blood volume goes up 40 to 50%. Heart rate goes up. The work increases. Of course, there is a child to look after now, and so you need to get circulation and oxygen to that child as well as to the mother. And the heart size goes up by about a third. And then these changes will revert after birth, and next time pregnancy occurs, these changes will occur again. The heart has to go through these remarkable physical changes, and that requires a lot of energy burning, a lot of adaptability to changing situations. Now, when we look at individual cells in the heart has to do something pretty remarkable. The fuel for the cells is usually sugars and fats, and these are found in our circulation. They're derived from the foods that we eat. But the cells can't use them in that format. And so in a little organelle, a little miniature organ inside each of our cells, they convert this into a special fuel called ATP. If you want to think of what it means, think of all the power, because that's where all the power comes from. That ATP then gets burned to do work. And that work in the heart is contraction and relaxation. And there's pretty good evidence that the way this occurs in men and women is different. We know that if we mess up the conversion of fuel to ATP or the use of ATP to actually do the work, we get cardiac disease as a result. But the way that occurs in men and women seems to be different. If we take, for example, in studies done with individual cells, if we add a mitochondrial poison, something that interferes with the function of the mitochondria, about a third to a quarter of the male cells die. None of the female cells die. And if you do that in animals, you see a similar kind of thing, where the males die and the females don't. And that suggests that there's something fundamentally different about the way they're fulfilling this process here, the way they're generating fuel and the way that they're actually using that fuel. We've seen that in our studies as well, where if we add a stress to the hearts of animals, for example, that makes the heart increase in size, that occurs more rapidly and more quickly in the males than it does in the females. It does happen in both. They end up at the same point, but the way they get there is a little bit different. And that suggests that these cells are behaving differently. It's not simply that they are surrounded by estrogen or testosterone, that these are fundamentally wired a little bit differently. And that's because they have different jobs to play at different stages of our lives. So this maybe underpins why people will get sick differently and why people probably need to be treated somewhat differently. When we ask for money to do our research, this is a question that shows up on grant applications from the Canadian Institutes for Health Research, which is the major funder of research in Canada. This is your tax dollars at work. One of the questions that's shown up in the last several years, I hope you can see it, it says, are sex biological considerations taken into account in this study? Please describe how sex and/or gender considerations will be considered in your research proposal. So for several years now, we've been aware that we need to pay attention to males and females in designing our studies. And so that pendulum is slowly swinging around the way we need it to go. And we're starting to see more and more studies where it happens. As Dr. Merz had mentioned, for many years, all studies were done in male animals typically. Why? Because there weren't hormonal swings in the males the way there are in the females, and therefore we had a more steady background to work with. At least that was the idea. But what happens is we miss very important biology when we do that. And life isn't that neat. People are different. Things change, and we need to take that into account in the way we change our studies. So this is being designed in now with the appreciation that we have to first understand why the differences are there and what the differences actually are before we can actually say, how can we treat these differently? So the take-home messages are very simple. First, heart cells from men and women are different. There's evidence that their underlying metabolism is different. As a result, these differences may be protective, but also these differences may result in different disease processes in men versus women, and as a result, they may respond differently to treatment as well. And so I'm interested in the why these changes occur, and we know that these differences exist between men and women. You're going to hear about that more later tonight. This is talking about, well, why do those differences happen in the first place, and what can we do about it? And if we ignore those differences, we run the risk of not liking what we see. So with that, yeah, that really is a mashup. With that, I will thank you for your time, and please enjoy the rest of the evening.
The key question, I think, is which one is the transgendered one? Or are they just one creature? Dr. Schubert, thanks. Lots of fascinating stuff going on here. One of the people who's deeply involved in the research around heart disease is Teri Moffat. She has a BSc in biochemistry, and she has 15 years of heart research under her belt. The project that she's currently involved in is called the Happy Hearts Research Project. The Happy is an acronym, and Teri Moffat will explain that for us. She's also a lab technician with Dr. Todd Duhamel. Now, you might have heard him on the radio with me, actually, because we helped to launch the Happy Hearts study and to recruit people. And if any of you here are people who volunteered for that, thank you. They need a lot of people to be part of the study. Teri will tell us a bit more about that. And her current research area is physical activity and chronic disease prevention. So, Teri, give us a sketch of what you know.
Thank you very much. As Teri mentioned, I work for Dr. Todd Duhamel at the St. Boniface Research Center. And some of the things that we're hearing tonight is that heart disease and stroke the leading cause of death among women in Canada. And what we do know is 80% of those deaths are preventable. So what we need to do is figure out how to prevent them. So when Edna goes to the hospital and finds out she's having a heart attack, they give you some ideas. She talked about her diet, her exercise. We need to learn earlier that we have cardiovascular disease so that we can make those changes before we end up in the hospital having a heart attack. So we're doing a research study. It's called Happy Hearts, and HAPPY is an acronym from Heart Attack Prevention Program for You. So we're recruiting women who are 55 years or older. You come to one appointment at the St. Boniface Research Center at the Asper Clinic, and it's an appointment that takes about 90 minutes to 2 hours. It's a one-time appointment, so it's a small time commitment. At the appointment, you come in, we do a consent, and the things that we're looking at are a couple specific tests that we're hoping will be able to determine if people are at a higher risk of having cardiovascular disease. Tests that will tell us early in the disease progression. So the specific things that are new are we look at arterial stiffness. So we have a new device that fits on the outside of your wrist. It is non-invasive, and it's able to determine whether your small and your large arteries are more or less stiff than they should be for your age group. The other thing we do is we do some moderate exercise. Is that echoing a lot? So we have you come in, we do 3 minutes of moderate exercise on a step or on a treadmill, and we take your blood pressure before that, and we take your blood pressure after that. And as we are doing tonight, we know blood pressure is a good sign. This is an even better indicator if your heart's working a little too hard or not hard enough when you're doing the exercise. Sorry. We also get you to fill out some questionnaires, and we do some other exercise tests. It's not as scary as this microphone, just so you know. So we do some medical history. We take your height and weight, the things that you would normally get done at the doctor. But by adding these a couple additional tests, we're hoping that we will be able to detect people's risk early, and then you can make lifestyle changes. You can increase your exercise, you can make some diet modifications, or you can get on medications earlier before the damage is done. And hopefully those 80% of deaths that are preventable, if you learn early enough to make these changes, they will be prevented. Thank you.
So, Teri, if people here tonight want to sign up for the Happy Hearts Research Project, what should they do? I think, actually, Ivan Berkowitz, who was a big factor in helping to pull all this together tonight, has he's at the back of the room. He has a little piece of paper with the contact number, the phone number, email address, and such. If you can reach them and help them in that study. Another person who's very much involved in the study of health and heart is here tonight, and you might have actually had the chance to sit down with Stephanie Caligiuri downstairs, because she is very much involved in special research projects around heart disease. Stephanie's a PhD student at University of Manitoba. She was named a future leader of Manitoba and the most promising student of the year in 2015, no less. And Stephanie's passion is to research nutrition therapies for heart disease and new ways to diagnose stroke. Stephanie says her ultimate goal is to challenge the status quo of healthcare in order to revolutionize how we see medicine. A noble goal, and someone who may well achieve it. Stephanie Caligiuri is here to tell us about her research. Stephanie.
Hello, everyone. It's a wonderful opportunity to be brought here today in order to speak in front of so many people that are motivated and interested in the same thing that we are. I think it's a unique opportunity and occurrence to have women brought together that have the same interests, goals, and the same issues, because the most important thing about medicine is asking the right questions. And by being brought together, you are helping us ask the right questions. The reason why I do the research that I do is because of the most simplest goal, and that is that I want everyone to live the life that they want to. I look at my parents that are in their late 50s, and they hope to retire soon, and unfortunately both of them have risk factors for heart disease. Both of them are overweight, both of them have high blood pressure, and both of them have high cholesterol. And it saddens me because I know that they are at risk for heart disease, because the reality is many people are. I want them to do everything that they want to do. When they retire, I want them to travel the world because they never got the opportunity to do so when they were younger, because they had me and my siblings very young. And I want the same for all of you here today. I want you to do everything that you've wanted to do, to have children, have grandchildren, watch your children and grandchildren grow up, go back to school, or to travel the world. But you're asking, how can we do that? And the reason, or the way that we can do that, is by changing the status quo and revolutionizing medicine. How we do that is through sound science, like clinical trials, and raising awareness. So one of the things that we do at St. Boniface Research Center with Alex, who you may have met, that was taking blood pressures with me earlier, is we run clinical trials to try and find new treatments for what we call the silent killer. You may have heard the silent killer is what we call high blood pressure. The reason being is because it has no signs or symptoms, and it is the number one risk factor attributed to heart attacks and strokes. So believe it or not, it's not high cholesterol, it's not physical inactivity, it's not smoking cigarettes, it's not being obese or diabetes, it is high blood pressure. So one of the things that we do is we try to find treatment strategies for high blood pressure, because the reality is about 60% of people do not properly take their blood pressure medications. So I've gone out and I've asked people, why do you not take your blood pressure medications? There's many reasons. They don't like the side effects, they can't afford the medications, they don't like taking medications. As a result, Dr. Grant Pierce and I designed a clinical trial where we're looking at nutrition as medicine. So we run a trial called the Hyperflax trial, where the purpose is to see if nutrition counseling combined with flaxseed can lower blood pressure and prevent the need for blood pressure medications in those that are newly diagnosed with hypertension or high blood pressure. So right now we are recruiting people for this clinical trial. We have about 26% of our population recruited. And one of the most important objectives is to look to see, how do men and women respond? Do women respond just as well to flaxseed as men, or does one group respond better than the other? And that is one of the most important things that has been left out of science in the past, because typically clinical trials have recruited mostly men. The second way that I hope to achieve my goal of having everyone live the life they want is by raising awareness. So you've seen that, for example, with the hypertension awareness campaign that Alex and I run, and Teri was helping us out with downstairs. One of the most important things is to give a reality check to people. Because often we go through life very busy, not listening to our heart or our body, and we miss the subtle cues. And that's why awareness is one of the most important things in medicine. So we do clinics at workplaces, shopping malls, community events, where we measure blood pressure to try and have people aware of where their blood pressure stands. And then we provide individualized nutrition counseling and education in order to help people achieve their health goals. So we have seen over 1,000 people in the last year, and I can tell you, for example, about 3% of those people were having a hypertensive emergency and did not know it. They would be sitting there and I asked them, how are you feeling today? And they said, I'm fine, I'm having a great day today. Meanwhile, their blood pressure was 2 to 3 times as high as it should have been. So normal blood pressure is about 120 over 80, and these people would have readings of about 280 over 240. So you know what that means is that your heart is working overtime. It has to produce such a high pressure in order to push the blood through all of your blood vessels. And what that means is your heart is having to undergo a lot of stress. Your brain, your eyes, your kidneys are all having far too much pressure brought onto them, meaning that individuals that were undergoing that hypertensive emergency are having damage happening to their organs right then and there. The difficulty is blood pressure fluctuates. One day it's normal, one day it's high. And that's why measuring it as frequently as possible is important. And that's why we've brought in this hypertension awareness campaign, to plant that seed of a reality check and motivation in the public. So what we hope to achieve, therefore, through the research that we do, is to find new effective treatment strategies for the number one risk factor for heart disease, which is hypertension. Treatments that are desirable for people, that will improve adherence and therefore improve control of blood pressure. And we also hope to bring about awareness. So why I do this research is because I want all of us here to live the life we want. How we're going to achieve that is by doing good clinical trials and raising awareness. What we hope to achieve is by bringing about new, desirable strategies for all of you, so you all have options, not just a standard set of medications, for example. And we hope to be able to plant a seed of motivation and a reality check for everyone that we do have to listen to our bodies. So thank you for everyone gathering here today. I love opportunities such as this because, as I said, you help me to ask the right questions, because medicine is all about asking the right questions. So thank you for the opportunity to meet all of you.
Stephanie Caligiuri, soon to be PhD, Dr. Caligiuri. We're joined as well tonight by Dr. Joanne Sawatzky. She's a professor and she's the Associate Dean of Graduate Programs at the College of Nursing in the Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of Manitoba. And she has a variety of research affiliations with the Manitoba Centre for Nursing and Health Research, University of Manitoba Centre on Aging, the WRHA St. Boniface Hospital Cardiac Sciences Program. She's a past recipient of the Canadian Council of Cardiovascular Nurses Cardiovascular Nursing Research Excellence Award. Dr. Sawatzky's program of research encompasses the cardiovascular health and illness trajectory and women's cardiovascular health in particular. And she has been, in fact, when she did her PhD, she did it on factors that influence women's heart health, and she did it at our own Refit Center. Dr. Sawatzky's program of research encompasses an array of things. She's currently the head of a 3-year, $300,000 study funded by the Victoria General Hospital Foundation entitled For Her Heart's Sake, the Strategies to Enhance Participation, STEP, as they call it, in Cardiac Rehabilitation Projects. So here is Dr. Joanne Sawatzky.
Thank you, Teri. And thank you to all of you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening on a very exciting initiative. I've been asked to say a few words about For Her Heart's Sake, and actually, Teri, you made a mistake. It's a $1 million innovative fundraising campaign initiated by the Victoria General Hospital Foundation. There are 3 components to this initiative. The first is an awareness and education campaign. The second is the First STEP cardiac program for women. And the third is the STEP in Cardiac Rehabilitation Research Project. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the STEP program and the research project. But before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the VGH Foundation for their commitment to women and heart health. As well, although I'm the lead investigator on this project, there are several others that are just as central to this project as I am. And they include Dr. Susie Santos from the VGH, Dr. Elizabeth Reddy, and Dr. George Keokas from the University of Manitoba, who are also key members of this investigative team. As well, we have collaborators on our research team from the Mature Women's Health Center at the Victoria General Hospital, the WRHA Cardiac Sciences Program, the Refit Center, and the Wellness Institute. So why are we doing this project? Of course, the one main reason is, as you've all heard here tonight, and I'm sure most of you are already aware, is that it's because cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death in women. But our biggest reason is because cardiac rehabilitation program participation rates in women here in the province of Manitoba is abysmal. It is less than 30%. In other words, less than 30% of women who are it is recommended that they attend cardiac rehabilitation after a cardiac event attend. And these statistics, interestingly, are better than many other places in North America. So we would like to change this statistics and see an increase in the number of women who participate in cardiac rehab in the province. The overall goal of the First Step program is to provide a comfortable, women-only environment that will engage, educate, and empower women, and provide these women with the necessary personal resources to enable them to take the step towards cardiac rehab and a lifelong commitment to heart health. So very briefly, the First Step program includes 12 weeks of weekly informational sessions. These sessions will be held at the Mature Women's Center at the VGH. The 60 to 90-minute sessions will be facilitated by the STEP program staff, including a nurse, a dietitian, and an exercise specialist, and will include information on key topics of interest like heart-healthy eating and weight management, but will also include learning about how to do warm-up exercise and cool-down exercises, and also time for questions and discussion. For the research component, essentially what we want to do is to see if this novel, gender-specific first step to cardiac rehabilitation program works. To do this, we're recruiting 150 women who are 50 years of age and older, who have had a cardiac event or cardiac surgery, and for whatever reason have not participated in a cardiac rehabilitation program. We will be randomly placing these women into two groups. So one group will go through the 12-week First Step program, and the other group will just do what they normally do for the first 6 months, after which time we will offer them the same program as well. We'll be doing baseline assessments on all the women, including a physical assessment as well. They will be completing questionnaires, and these will be repeated at 3, 6, and 12 months. So what we're looking for is differences over time, such as their quality of life, levels of depression, use of the healthcare system, such as hospitalizations, visits to walk-in clinics, etc., and their level of physical activity. So why is this program unique? First and foremost, it's been designed for women only, in a women-only environment at the Mature Women's Center. The program will be individualized. The women will be encouraged to focus on individual goals and priorities for lifelong change. The sessions will be very small groups, we're hoping for less than 10 women in a group. There will be peer support at the sessions, and the women will be encouraged to continue this peer support outside of the sessions, such as mall walking together, etc. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, a program such as this, which will capture those women who are either just not ready or choose not to attend traditional mixed-gender cardiac rehabilitation programs. To our knowledge, these just currently do not exist. Certainly, there are no women-only cardiac rehab programs here in Manitoba. As well, these women may be able to provide insight into why they did not enroll in a CRP or a cardiac rehabilitation program, which will be very helpful for women-focused cardiac rehab planning in the future. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Sawatzky. I was especially curious. I spoke to the folks out at the Victoria Hospital a couple of years ago about the project that was going on there. One of the things that was very puzzling was the low level of participation of women who could be part of this but aren't. And I ended up talking to a woman named Carolyn Thomas, who is she's a blogger, and she writes a blog called My Heart Sisters. And she talks a lot to women about these kinds of things. And when she asks them why they don't take part in these kinds of projects, the answer often is, my dog needs me, the kids need me, my husband needs me, the neighbors need me, and her own focus on herself is one of the last things that many women focus on. I'll bet you may find that to be true in yourself. But, well, the dog may be helpful, and it may come and visit you when you're old. In any case, just think a little differently about what you need to do for yourself.